This conference is being recorded.
Also, something of a CoreAlign super user. I think you've done all of our available programs, so that's exciting. So thank you for taking the time again to share a little bit about your experience in the labs. I think folks who hear about it will get a much fuller picture of what it's like to participate and hopefully be really inspired to apply. And I am, for everyone listening, Poonam Dreyfus-Pai. I'm the Senior Manager of Network Building and Engagement, and the Innovation Labs is one of the programs I manage. Chandra, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So today I wanted to walk us through the purpose and the goals of the labs, the activities or the features of the lab design. We'll get a chance to hear from FARAH about her experience as a participant. We'll talk through some of the application and the key dates, and there will be time for questions. And I would say that there's time for questions throughout. So if something comes up for you as we're going through, don't hesitate to ask. And FARAH, if something comes up for you as we're going through, a curiosity you might have, don't hesitate to ask. Next slide. Awesome. So we decided to do the Innovation Lab to create this space because fellows, particularly in our generative fellowship, had indicated that they wanted a space to continue practicing innovation. The fellowship gives you 6 months, sometimes a little bit longer, and just at the end of that is when people are finally starting to get comfortable with the innovation process and to actually start expanding their use of it. And so this felt like a nice opportunity to continue what was learned there. It also is an opportunity for folks to bring in colleagues and other movement partners that they might want to collaborate with on some of these juicy, complex questions that the reproductive movement has not been able to solve yet. And finally, the fellowship doesn't give financial resources, and that's often been a barrier for folks and their ability to collaborate. So we wanted to offer some of those resources to address that particular barrier. Should we do the next slide? Great. So our goals for the Innovation Lab is to, one, facilitate that collaborative process, to give folks a space to explore more experimentation and actual implementation of solutions as opposed to simply defining the problem and ideating, like really moving into that next stage. And hopefully design solutions to these big, complex issues that haven't been addressed yet that might have movement level impact. So some of the key features. How am I doing on pace, y'all? Do you want me to slow down?
Okay. I think you're doing great.
Great. Mm-hmm. So some of the key features of our program is that each team gets to individually design its process and its practices within each phase. Ooh, shit, thank you so much. We'll talk a little bit about what that looks like, but CoreAlign will offer some suggestions for how a team might do it, but the team gets to individually choose their design. We do offer these innovative process and tools so that folks can practice design thinking together with support. There is a virtual lab community, and there is both peer coaching and staff coaching from CoreAlign, and then again, the financial support. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, go back one. There we go. So the design challenge, which is the problem that you're walking in with in your application, it must address a complex repro movement issue and be related to ensuring that folks have the love, sex, family, and community that they desire. It must be a shared concern among all team members, so all the folks on the team are interested in addressing the problem and working with the problem over the course of the 9 months that they're in the lab. And ideally, the solutions would affect more than one organization, which would help us, again, get to that movement level impact space that we're hoping to see change. So the team gets to choose the problem that it wants to solve and gets to self-organize, although we do offer some tools and recommendations that might support that process of meeting. We don't want anyone to feel sort of hemmed in by the suggestions, but we do know that sometimes it's nice to have a template to work from to get you started. So our suggestions are that folks meet virtually and in person, and these are some of the expectations or these are some of the things that might help with that process. So we suggest that you meet twice a month. That's really what we learned is the amount of time that's needed to really get into each of the design cycle phases. The meetings will last about 2 hours each probably, especially if you consider the teams are about 3 to 5 people, so you might need that much time just to ground and set together before you dig in. There'll be community webinars or web meetings every 6 weeks. Ooh, Shannon, would you mind going back one? And we suggest at least 2 in-person meetings so that folks get a chance to really work together both in person and virtually. And sometimes the in-person meetings will be a little longer than the 2-hour each meeting, so it might also give people an opportunity to do more. Okay, next slide. For some reason, my mouse seems to be frozen, so I apologize for that. There's a little cursor on the screen. In terms of the innovative processes and tools, we provide virtual support, so these webinars to launch each of the phases of the lab period and coaching. We will have practice tools around ideation, prototyping, defining the problem, working with end users. We'll also have sample agendas, suggested activities, and worksheets that folks can use or not use. Again, it's up to them. That just might help aid the process along. Next slide. The learning community, I think, is one of the key places where this differs from the fellowship. Obviously, the fellowship folks are coming in with individual problems, and their learning community is their cohort. This community is expanded past the cohort into all the different lab teams that are forming. So each lab team will get a chance to meet with other lab teams over the course of the 9-month period, learn from each other, offer each other feedback, and do some story sharing about their own process. We're also asking that folks do some story sharing with the larger CoreAlign community. One of the things that we know doesn't really exist currently is people's sort of stories as they're happening of failure and experimenting and trying again. So we'd love for folks that are interested in CoreAlign's programs to hear from folks who are actively experimenting and to hear and learn from their own lessons. We're also, in that community, as part of that community, the CoreAlign team is also available to coach, and we'll be coaching at least 3 to 4 times each of the labs, so that folks get really focused support to guide them as they move from step to step. Next slide, please. And then the last feature of the labs is the financial support. So each team gets up to $3,000 to cover their expenses. These are some of the examples of expenses that are most commonly cited as the things that folks need help covering. So meeting expenses, travel or transportation expenses, food and lodging, childcare support. And these are all particularly when they're in-person meetings, but we can certainly talk about other expenses that may come up that are that count under the 3,000. Next slide. Great. So I've been talking about about each of the phases that happens in the lab. So this is what it looks like against the timeline. So the program will go from November of 2016 to August of 2017. With each phase taking about 6 weeks. So from November to December will be our sort of kickoff, launch, and preparation phase. January to February will be our inspiration and research phase. March and April will be ideation. May and June will be the beginnings of experimentation, and July and August will either be continued experimentation or, if we've gotten there, the implementation phase for folks. Next slide. So round 1 was our pilot phase, and we learned quite a bit from the folks that participated there, and for ourselves just designing the process. And so here's what's a little different in round 2. The teams are a little bit smaller. We had 3 to 6 people originally, and we're saying 3 to 5 because 6 actually allows the group to split right down the center into 2 smaller teams of 3, which is not a bad thing necessarily, but we would like to keep the groups together as much as possible and allow for collaboration across their teams. So 5 feels like maybe an easier number to coordinate schedules and time differences and things like that. So we're also suggesting US-based because it can, again, be really challenging to coordinate overseas. We are offering more support to folks. Oh, sorry, I don't know. My computer just went to sleep for no reason that I can think of. Hold on one second. There we go. We're offering more support from the CoreAlign end to help folks sort of build that team cohesion right at the front end. So we'll be helping foster group agreements and norms right in the launch phase so that folks can dig right into the collaboration right from the beginning. We're also adding more time to each individual phase. The original pilot round was 5 months long. This is 9 months, so we've built in a lot of time into each individual phase, and there's a longer overall lab period. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there'll be 3 or 4 sessions with a CoreAlign coach, as opposed to 1 or 2, which was in the pilot round. And we're going to foster more peer coaching across teams. So those are sort of the key differences in this round based on the feedback that we received from participants in round 1. I don't think we need to do this chat pod because it was really a gauge of where people were in forming their teams. Really, we can just ask you where you are in forming your team. Are you still there, Rula?
Yes, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself.
No worries.
Okay. So one of the questions, maybe the only question that I submitted when RSVPing was, it was related to the fact that I actually have a couple different people interested in a couple different collaborations. There's one group, as you know, the Team Sweet Spot group from the innovation convening that has like repeatedly thought about it. We've worked together as a team before. Some of us were interested in continuing, and some of us were interested in continuing under this particular format. I also was like batting around an idea that was maybe like we've had less practice working together and thinking about what this would look like, but Park and I thought about potentially working on a funding in the movement kind of problem where we would be looking at fundraising for people who are in positions like hers, where you're in public office and you can't be fundraising all the time on your own. From anything from that to like the more complex things that nonprofits run into when they're trying to like not be dependent on foundations, but also have to in some ways. So that's a kind of more open question, and the team would be like, it's not fully defined yet. There's some ideas. So one of my biggest questions is like, is there a specific phase you recommend a team already have gotten to, or like certain characteristics that make a team better of a fit for this process?
That's a really great question. And actually, Farah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that before I offer mine as someone who's gone through the process already.
So I think there is maybe like a critical mass or like a just enough cohesion that you need to have as a group to I think to be able to like move forward. So, I mean, with a group that you described that you have less practice working together, if you feel like you have a sense of like folks' work styles and what you're like how that would go, then I think that could be something that works out fine. I would, in general, like maybe not suggest being on a team with like people that you like don't really know at all. That because the process of getting to know each other and launching all at the same time is kind of a lot to hold.
So does that mean you would suggest that like everyone on a team know each other, not just that there be linkages between them?
I mean, I don't know if I would say like every single person, but like I don't know. I don't know how to give a good sense of what the just enough cohesion is. It's like everybody's kind of aligned in the same direction, and you have a sense of what the group dynamic will be. Does that help?
Yeah.
To add to that, it sounds to me like if the group doesn't know each other, like if everyone on the group doesn't know each other, it seems like it might be worth it to have a meeting beforehand to discuss applying with all the people so that they actually have a
Mhm.
chance to get to know each other, at least in the application phase, and can make
Mhm.
a thoughtful decision about how they might participate and what it could look like to collaborate. It feels trickier, and in fact, we experienced this with some of the teams where folks did not know each other, and then it got really difficult to have conversations about how to collaborate and what the expectations would be once they were accepted without knowing the people on the team. And so I think it's worth it to have at least a starting conversation in the application phase if you're working with folks that you have never, or if folks are working together that have never worked together before. Or you could choose to work with folks that you have worked with before, and use the space in that way.
I would
This
add
is
maybe
Sandra.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Farah.
So the only tiny thing that I would add also is like how, like I guess how conversant people are in the CoreAlign like method of innovation, I think is going to make a big difference also. So if it's, like if you're talking to people who, you don't know very well, and they're also like haven't participated in a previous fellowship or something like that. Like that, I think that might be a challenge also, because like bringing people into that, like it's a language that people have to learn, and so like learning a language and meeting each other and figuring out what you're doing all at once is a lot to fit in.
It's a lot.
Mhm.
Agreed. And that's actually, I should note, that's also one of the things that we're hoping to build a little bit more support for, recognizing that just because you've gone through the fellowship doesn't mean that you want to or are equipped to teach design thinking, right? That's a whole different set of expectations and skills. And so what we're hoping to do is provide a little bit more support to each of the groups, particularly for folks who have not gone through the fellowship, so that the team can share that language, each lab team can share that language with a little bit more ease.
This is Chandra. I was just going to, just building off of what you both were sharing, that one of the reasons that in this round we were asking, encouraging teams to meet twice is that intentionally to have one of those first meetings happen at the very beginning for a lot of the reasons that are being raised, so that teams, whatever your level of familiarity and working together relationships have been in the past, so that you have some time and space to really set and establish some group agreements and norms before launching into the actual design challenge work.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so in terms of not so much the group composition, but more like the, consensus around like an idea, or like the amount of shaping that an idea has gone from, abstract values and concerns to, I guess I'm trying to figure out if there is sort of a place to come in at in terms of the stage of alignment, maybe. Or, even if we all write an application, is this like the application is going to be, I have to say, I'm sorry, I didn't have time to look at the application, but are we talking about like a group that is clear on what the problem means to them, a group that is clear on like a set of things they'd like to explore? What's useful for us here?
That's a really great question. I think it could be a both and. I think you are looking for a group that both has a deep understanding of the problem, right? So that could be that people have different understandings of the problem, which make it sort of a multifaceted, complex problem, which is what we're asking folks to solve. So I would say a deep understanding of the problem is shared by all the team members, and that there is a commitment to solving the problem. I don't think that there needs to be a shared consensus on the way to solve it, because the process will hopefully uncover a multitude of ways to solve it.
Okay.
Does that feel clearer?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it probably remains to be seen for the groups I'm talking to, where we really stand on that. If it's okay for me to share a little bit about my the Team Sweet Spot group that you know about. one of the things that I think, one really positive thing that came out of our experience as a group is that, so it started out as a challenge. Initially we had a team of 8 people that sort of clumped together. If you might remember, like the speed dating turned into, pairs clump up and so forth. And so it was a really interesting process where we all had like a reason that we could understand that we were interested in the topic as it came together. But there was a point where, all 8 of us around a table were very, I think we were having a hard time figuring out like what of all the things in our pile really answered like something for everyone about like why we're here at the table, why we care about this, etc. And so this was on the second day, and our coach actually that day said something so helpful, which was just like, you don't all have to stay in the big circle of 8 people the whole time you're working on this. So if you have different areas you're interested in, feel free to, break off and come back together and see what y'all have come up with. And that's actually where, when we came back, we found that like we had each sort of worked on pieces that looked like they fit together as a marketing campaign for what we presented as the Humane Resources Hub. And there's actually so many things that people brought to the table that, like, I'm not even sure if we wanted to go forward as Team Sweet Spot, that the Humane Resources Hub would be the one and only thing. And in a way, it was comfortable for us to present it because it allowed for, like, a pretty expansive, it was like, this isn't necessarily only one thing. We're allowing for it to include many different components. And so I guess I'm saying that because I think we're all still like there and caring about the problem, but not even necessarily like the context that it most matters in, or like the mechanism that is like causing it the most. Or do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And I actually,
okay, so
for what it's worth, I think that's great. I think this process would be really difficult if this might not be the right process if all of y'all felt like this is the only solution and now we're ready to implement it, because this is an exploratory space. So I think it's great that there are sort of other ideas that are floating around, or other mechanisms, or solutions in addition to humane resources that might get at some of this, the deeper problem, which is that, people in the movement don't feel like the places that they work are committed to their sustained, like, holistic, whole selves being valued, right? Like, I mean, that's like my reaching back into the depths, remembering your problem statement. And I think there are a number of ways to address that, and a number of organizations that I feel like that applies to and would be interested in finding solutions for. So all to say, if humane resources was the final decision or solution that you guys came up with, then you would be more in an implementation place than an exploration place, and the lab might not be the best place for it.
Gotcha. So if we were coming in with something that we were pretty sure about, that might not be the best place. I see.
You would just be like in a different part of the process, right? So you would be in a testing place, which is great, but then there would be quite a lot of time where you wouldn't get
be
to,
like, we think we know what we're doing.
Right.
Okay, well, I'll bring that back to the group and see if, we really do feel like we have alignment in those already. Because I don't want to speak for the whole group. That's an open question right now. Thank you.
And I should also just make a quick caveat, which is to say, it's not that you can't use this space to test out humane resources for a certain. I would just hope that you could also use this space to test out a couple of different solutions to that issue.
Right. Totally. Okay.
This is Chandra. Just going back a little bit to some things to consider in terms of team composition in general. Something that we heard from the pilot teams was that the smaller the team size, the more easy and more nimble the process and experience were, for pretty obvious reasons like scheduling and what FARAH was raising around just getting everyone at the same level of collaboration and readiness and integration. Just it gets simpler when there are fewer people in that group. And so conversely, if you do have a larger team, you'll want to just really go into this knowing that that the coordination aspects can be a little bit trickier, and or needing to plan more time for accounting for the needs and readiness of everyone that's involved.
Sure.
And Rula, if for some reason you find that all 8 people from Team Sweet Spot do want to move forward, which it sounds like is not likely to be the case, but if it is, then you might want to figure out how that gets broken up, because we really are recommending teams of 3 to 5. A team of 8 could easily be split into a team of 3 and 5, or a team of 4 and 4, based on maybe different elements of what wants to be worked on. So
I think that's potentially really cool, because if we do end up feeling like there's different like clumpings around stuff people are more excited to tackle, you know, it doesn't mean that, like, basically it sounds like it's not that, you know, it has to be one team, not everyone can participate, we must pick one direction to go in, and so if anything, that sounds even better.
Great.
So, you know, in theory, if 4 people want to do one thing and 4 people want to do another, I would love to, like, keep working side by side on different pieces of this. So great, thank you.
You're welcome. Let's keep moving and seeing if there are any other questions that come up for either one of you. Shannon, would you mind going to the next slide?
Sorry about that.
Awesome, no problem. So Farah, I wanted to give you a chance to share a little bit about your experience working in the lab teams, maybe sharing some highlights and also sharing some challenges of collaborating in this setting so that folks can know sort of the full picture, and maybe say a little bit about what's coming next.
Yeah. Yes. So I'm really excited to get to talk about this. I'll start from the beginning.
Do you want to share your camera?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my.
Yay.
All right.
There you are. Yeah, thank you so much.
I have a little list of guiding questions I'm going to put up here so I can see it. Okay, so to start with the beginning, so I came to the Innovation Lab process just having finished a generative fellowship, or I guess I was sort of in the wind down of the generative fellowship, and that process had left me with a lot of questions that I wanted to explore more, but so the generative fellowship was awesome, and I also wanted the opportunity to work collaboratively with other folks, and especially as a lawyer, like wanted to work a little bit outside of the lawyerly comfort zone and work with other folks who are tackling the issue from a very different perspective. So Team Dignity Birth Campaign coalesced around the question of how might we reduce obstetric violence, and how might we use or I guess our hypothesis was that by using healing, we could address the underlying trauma among care providers who perpetrate obstetric violence and essentially create a positive feedback loop that would have a positive impact on birthing people. And so we had, it's funny, when I see the way that the things have changed from last time to this time, I see a lot of our group in that. I'm sure probably everybody does. But so we had a binational group that was half of us were U.S. based and half of us were based in South Africa, from the Compassionate Birth Project, which was doing really similar work along those lines. So so there were 3 of us there, 3 of us here, and the 3 of us here in the States were distributed, like, just scattered across the winds, like Arizona, Michigan, and New York. So that came with a lot of challenges and benefits just right off the bat, getting to talk to folks who are in different disciplines, right? A lot of the folks who were in a group or midwives. Other folks had more kind of like different types of healing work expertise and communications expertise and all that. And having a bunch of folks with different perspectives, I think really helped create a like really fertile environment for ideas or things that I definitely never would have come up with on my own. And I think that's one of the amazing benefits of the I guess the lab model is that like you have the opportunity for like cross-pollination and like it's really like radical collaboration in action. So I mean, I think the thing that I was really hoping to get from the process was being just very much outside of my own box. I think that like the CoreAlign training that I had before was teaching me how to do that, but in a way, like I kind of like even outside of my own box is still within my own frame. And so then getting to work with people who are completely outside of my frame like was a really radical shift for me and a very welcome one. So like I said, that kind of came with its challenges. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we had was sort of a difference in orientation. So those of us on the U.S. team had, most of us had been through CoreAlign training before, either a generative fellowship or a speaking race to power fellowship. And so like one, we were already like conversant in the language or kind of more or less understood the innovation process. And a big part of it also was our I guess like our speaking race to power training and particular like our relation to race and our willingness to like really dive in and address race as part of the problem. And I think that like there were some differences in the group that I think that we had like, I guess I'll say I think maybe assumed we were all on the same page about some things and like in our own processes, and that like that turned out to not be the case. And so I think that's why earlier I was saying like you kind of want to make sure that you like have a sense of everybody else's like work style and where everybody else is at, because getting us together in one place I think was a pretty significant challenge that I think, like in some ways detracted from the momentum of the project. But I mean, that said, going through that process, even though it was uncomfortable a lot of the time, it was also like really fulfilling. And when we had the opportunities to be together as a group, I think that that's when things really like got a lot of traction and we moved forward. Because like working through those sorts of challenges, like interpersonal challenges, challenges around race, just challenges around perspective in general and like whether you're coming from an explicitly like social justice focus versus like more of a healing work focus, which I hadn't realized until then were actually kind of different things. Working through those things in real time, like face to face, are so much easier than trying to have these conversations over technology, even like in the best of technology. So I think that like kind of when we were at our best was around the time of the innovation convening. We managed to get like a lot of work done that really moved things ahead, and I was really happy like with what we presented and our lab cafe like mini experiences that were sort of like mini prototypes for the sort of the big picture thing that is, I guess, being prototyped toward of a workshop that's going to take place at the International Confederation of Midwives Conference in 2017. And so, different parts of the group are doing certain mini workshops at different types of gatherings that will work up to this presentation that is ultimately going to be about doing healing work for the purpose of ending obstetric violence by doing healing work with healthcare providers. I think another one of the challenges that we faced came some of like being very coalesced around one idea, and so like some of the discussion earlier about like how because then like if you're married to the idea already, then it kind of hampers the innovation process a little bit. Like and it may be a great idea, right? Like what we were working with, like there was like the Compassionate Birth Project like already has like their brilliant idea, and it's really brilliant, and like we sort of came around to that they were right about a lot of things that we were resistant to, but like maybe that was not the best thing for our process, unfortunately. And then in terms of what lies ahead, like it's not really clear. Definitely like the presentation at the International Confederation of Midwives is going to happen. I think that all of us have really deepened our commitment to ending obstetric violence through means other than trying to like pass a law or something like that, right? Like that we're committed to creative solutions that have addressing trauma as a focus. I'm not sure if it means that like there are going to be future collaborations that are sort of not within the basket of Dignity Birth Campaign, or like if there's going to be some way that we're going to be supportive to the work that's being done in South Africa. But I mean, regardless, definitely like I think we've come away having learned a great deal and having really like new avenues to explore, and like new folks who we know so much better now from that 5-month process to be able to do that work with. So I'm also really glad to hear that the length of it is going to be longer, because that 5 months, I think it was a short time to like hit the swing of like find a rhythm and then not always feel like we were running behind on something. So that's good.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Rula, I'd love to take a minute to see if you have any new questions after hearing from FARAH.
I don't think I do right now.
Cool. So I will just say that this only seems to happen during webinar time. My computer had an entire freak out, and I can no longer see the screen. So I'm hoping you can still see me and I look calm and unperturbed. But right now I'm randomly looking at a new tab of Google instead of the actual screen of the webinar. So I'm just going to ask Chandra, if you're still there, to move on to the next slide and just tell me really quickly what it says on it.
Sure. This is the application process slide.
Aha. Okay. So our applications are due on October 7th. And to find them, you can go to our website. And the questions basically ask, what is the issue you're hoping to solve? What is your team composition? Who's on your team? What are your shared values? And then the application now is asking folks to think a little bit in advance about how they might collaborate. What are the things that they might see as barriers to their collaboration, and how might they address them sort of on the front end? So something like that might be like, we're scattered all over the country. So one of the things we might do is set like a regular time that we'll meet, as an example. We're hoping that folks can have a little thoughtfulness about that in advance, now that we know what we know at CoreAlign, and now that the lab participants who have gone through the process know what they know. We're just trying to help each of the teams moving forward have more thought around how their group will meet and form and build that cohesion that'll help them collaborate more thoughtfully. Next slide, and if you could tell me the title of that slide, that would be great too.
Important dates.
Aha, okay, so October 7th is our application deadline. We hope to have a team selected and informed by October 31st. And then November 9th is our launch webinar. So that'll be the webinar for the folks that have been accepted. It will give folks more information about the process, the milestones that'll happen in each phase, and a little bit more about the support that we're offering. Yeah.
The last slide is just questions.
Great. Awesome. I'm so glad this happened towards the end of this webinar. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi, this is Lucretia.
Oh, hi, Lucretia. I'm so glad you could join us.
Yeah, I just wanted to say hi. I've been on for a while, so I was listening to someone talking. So, yeah, I just wanted to check in and say hello. And this is really good information because I'm been working with Lula. So,
Oh, wonderful.
yeah.
Oh, it's so nice to hear your voice, and I'm sorry we didn't realize you were on the call earlier. Did you have any questions or thoughts you wanted to add?
No, I think, I was never Lula's question, and I think it, because we had talked, so I think it answered a bit of our questions about like group dynamics and sort of how to move forward, because we had a very, we were kind of moving towards a solution, humane resources as a solution, but the last time Lula and I talked, kind of going back and recircling, like, okay, like, this is the problem, and trying to figure out all the different pieces, like Lula discussed, of like, we have so much here, and so, but we're trying to sort of fit it into what we think is a solution, but going back to that, innovation thinking. So it was helpful to hear other people talk about their process and sort of what has been helpful really creating group dynamics, because that has been something that we've been trying to work through. Is just getting our groups together. Yeah, on the same page.
Yeah.
So no, I don't have any like burning questions right now, but it's been really good information. I'm not watching the webinar. I'm just listening to the call. I don't have my computer. I can't watch the webinar on my phone and be on the call. So
No worries. I'm glad you joined us by call and that you were able to hear stuff. And hopefully this is all still recording as planned, but if not, I can at least send people the slides so that they have some sense of the information.
I would appreciate that. So.
We can pass that along for sure. Is there anybody else that randomly joined us that we didn't get a chance to introduce and say hello to? Okay, maybe not. Well, I will just leave it here to say that if anyone does have any other questions, the website is super informative, I think. There's also a participant packet from round one if folks want to see sort of some of the processes that the pilot lab teams went through. And there's also an overview packet to give folks sort of a bigger picture of what's going on in each of the phases, and what are some of the, if there are like sort of questions that you might have, that you might find them also in the frequently asked questions. So definitely go to the website, and then I am always available by email. So feel free to contact me that way if you have any other questions. Farah, thank you so much for taking time out of your very, very busy day to join us and share your experience.
Yeah.
And Lucretia and Rula, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy days to learn more about the program. I hope you will apply.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
All right, y'all. Looks like we're ending it just under an hour, so yay. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Farah. It was great to see you, too.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
We'll talk to you all soon. Thank you so much.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.